The narrative around Joe Burrow has been very disrespectful ever since the Bengals missed the playoffs. And when you want to boil everything down and look at the entirety of this season for Cincinnati, 0% of this was because of Joe Burrow. And at the end of the day, he is the only active quarterback that can beat Mahomes. No other quarterback can do it, whether you like it or not. And that goes to show the greatness of Joe Burrow and who he is. And it's a shame that we didn't get to see him in the postseason this year. And let me stop you right now before you run to my comments. This season has nothing to do with Joe Burrow. If you want to look at the missed kicks to win games for Evan McPherson, or if you want to look at this defense giving up 40 different points so many different times, or this defense giving up 21 points in the fourth quarter to the Ravens, at the end of the day, I get that they started slow. They shouldn't have lost that game to the Patriots. But if you want to blame this season on Joe Burrow, I think you need to do some serious thinking about yourself. Joe Burrow's been the only player this entire season that's been calm, cool, and collected. This has been a terrible offensive line. The defense was abysmal. The kicking game was terrible. I understand that Jamar Chase and T. Higgins had big seasons, but let's not be so quick to forget. Both of these guys were holding out at a certain point in time in the offseason, and that definitely goes to show why this offense maybe started a little bit slow. I know this team is notorious for starting slow, but if you want to look at a reason why this offense started slow so early on, how about the top two receivers are taking some time off because they want to get their payday and they end up coming back? You can't blame any of this season on Joe Burrow, in my opinion. You want to break everything down. Let's go year by year for Burrow. Year one, he tears his ACL, and he's only been in the league for 5 seasons. Year one, rookie year, he tears his ACL, and this team has to kind of reconstruct. The offensive line was terrible. They go out and get Jamar Chase in the first round, and everyone's like, why didn't you bolster up this offensive line? Well, because they make it to the Super Bowl. They would make it to the Super Bowl with a rookie wide receiver, with Joe Burrow, who really only played off of a half season in his rookie year. They go into Arrowhead and knock off Patrick Mahomes, something that no other active quarterback has been able to do. Josh Allen is 0 for 4 against Mahomes. Lamar Jackson cannot beat Mahomes. Look at every other great quarterback. Justin Herbert can't even win a playoff game. And this conference is loaded with young, great quarterbacks. But at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes only has 3 losses in his entire postseason career. 2 of them are to the GOAT, and the other one is to Joe Burrow. And you can make the case that the next year, after the Bengals would lose in the Super Bowl in Joe Burrow's second season, you can make a serious case, in my opinion, that if it weren't for that late hit by the Bengals defender, that Cincinnati has a serious shot at beating Mahomes again in only year 3 of Joe Burrow, even year 2.5. Then the next season, it was like, okay, we've got to re-bolster up. We've got to go again. And Burrow would tear that ligament in his hand. At the time, they were 5-4, had again that little bit of a slow start, but that was when they were starting to ramp everything up. And we were really robbed of another Mahomes-Joe Burrow rivalry. And everyone's focusing on Patrick versus Josh right now, how great that rivalry is. It's not a rivalry when you're 0-4 against someone in the postseason. I understand the games have been cinema. They've been great in the past. At the end of the day, Josh Allen can't beat Mahomes when it matters the most. And Joe Burrow has almost done it twice. Now, he tears the ligament in his hand. They're coming into year 5 of Joe Burrow in the NFL. And like I said, you have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase that both want to hold out because they are unhappy with their current contract situation. The offensive line was mediocre all season long. The defense was abysmal. They gave up the most passing yards in the NFL, and they gave up the 6th most points per game. This defense was awful, and Joe Burrow had an MVP caliber season. I think if this team makes the playoffs, they finish the year 9-8. If they win one more game, and I'm about to go through the entire schedule and read you off of how crazy it was that they didn't win one more game. If they win one more and they finish 10-7, Joe Burrow should have been the MVP. This dude had 43 touchdown passes, almost 5,000 passing yards to only 9 picks. This offense was unbelievable. They were beating playoff teams. They beat the Steelers. They beat the Broncos. They were beating good teams. And we were robbed of Joe Burrow in the postseason yet again, but let's dive into this entire schedule right here. Okay, so we know that Cincinnati is notorious for starting slow, and they did it again this year. They were 0-3. They put themselves in a pretty deep hole, and that was when everyone was immediately hitting kind of the panic button on them. They had that bad loss to New England. I have no excuses for that game at all. But week 2, they play the Kansas City Chiefs, and Kansas City would get that super bailed pass interference late in the fourth quarter that would put them in field goal range to hit a game winner, but they only won by 1 point. Evan McPherson missed a PAT that game. There's one loss because of the kicking game. Let's go to week 3, Monday Night Football. Jaden Daniels, lights up this defense for 38 points. I understand that this was a great offense all season long, but they didn't start to reach their full peak until later in the year, and this defense let up 38 points to a rookie quarterback in week 3. So then they beat Carolina, then they're 1-3. Now they have a really huge opportunity to get to 2-3, kind of turn their season around. And they're playing Baltimore. We knew how great that they were. And this was an unbelievable game. Burrow had 5 touchdowns, almost 400 passing yards, only 1 interception, and they have a chance to win it in overtime against Baltimore. Evan McPherson in this kicking unit kind of mess everything up. The snap gets bobbled. McPherson misses the kick. Easy field goal for Justin Tucker on the other end, and the Bengals lose again. Not to mention, they put up 38 points. If you put up 38 points in the National Football League, I don't know how you're going to lose a game. You cannot blame Joe Burrow there. Defense, pathetic job, and of course, McPherson misses again. Okay, but not to worry. They'd have some easier opponents on the schedule. They lost to Philadelphia. We know how great that they are. They're 4-5, and they have a huge opportunity to turn this entire season around, and this is when they go on a 3-game losing streak, and none of it's Joe Burrow's fault. So with a huge opportunity to get to 500 and completely steer the season around, they're playing Baltimore again. They're going on the road this time, but they have a huge lead. They were winning the entirety of this game. But in the fourth quarter, this defense would give up 21 points. Joe Burrow had 4 passing touchdowns. What more can you ask? I think Jamar Chase had like 50 fantasy points. What more can you ask from this duo? They gave up 21 points in the fourth quarter, and the Ravens win by 1 point. 35-34. Potentially the season on the line the next week against the Chargers, and they have to go on the road. Chargers, we know that they won 11 games. They were a playoff team, super good team. And Cincinnati was in there all game long. Another Joe Burrow masterclass, 350 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. They had 2 Evan McPherson field goals to give them a 3-point lead in the fourth quarter. Guess what? Missed both of them, and they lose again, and they go to 4-7 on the season. Again, I'm sitting here asking myself, what more can you ask Joe Burrow to do? That's the 3rd game now that kicking has lost this team. But now it's for real. Now everything's starting to set in. Once you get to that 8th loss, you're really playing with fire here, and you're probably not going to make the postseason. And they're playing the Steelers. The Steelers had been a solid team all year long. We know that they would also make the playoffs. And what did the Bengals do? Put up 38 points. Of course, you guessed it, another Joe Burrow masterclass, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. This defense gave up 44 points. That is the 2nd time now that Joe Burrow and the Bengals offensively put up 38 points and lost. Not to mention when they put up 33 against the Commanders and lost. How many times are you going to have to put up 30 plus points and lose a game because your defense is that atrocious? And then we know what happens. Joe Burrow puts on his freaking cape and they win 5 straight games. They get to 9-8 and put themselves this close to potentially making the postseason. Can you not see what I'm talking about here? People in the media are trying to spin this. How are you going to talk about quarterbacks being a winning stat when Joe Burrow had an MVP caliber season with 43 touchdown passes, 4,900 passing yards to only 9 picks, and this team loses 8 football games? This was a historic season for Jamar Chase. He won the Triple Crown. What more can you ask from this offense? Joe Burrow was the only consistent thing on this team the entirety of this season, and they were still losing football games. I will sit here and die on this hill. Joe Burrow is the only quarterback in the NFL that can beat Patrick Mahomes, and it's been proven. We've seen it before. You heard everybody kind of getting fired up towards the end of the year when Cincinnati was on this winning streak. If you're the Chiefs, if you're the Bills, you don't want the Bengals in the postseason, because if they can do that, we know what they've been in the past. When Joe Burrow goes on the road and beats Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead Stadium, doesn't matter. He's the only quarterback that's been able to do that. I don't know how you can simply put Josh Allen ahead of him, even if Josh wins the MVP this year. As a quarterback, you're defined by what you do in the postseason. And Josh hasn't done anything in the postseason. Lamar hasn't done anything in the postseason. All of these other guys haven't done diddly squat in the postseason. And at the end of the day, Joe Burrow is the only quarterback that rises up when it matters the most. And you can go back and look at it in this schedule. The proof is in the pudding here. 3 games lost because of field goal kicking or extra points. Another 3 games lost because you're putting up 30 points plus. 2 of them you're putting up 38, but you're putting up 30 points plus, and your defense is allowing more than that. That's unbelievable. That's 6 games right there. How does that happen? It simply can't. And if I'm the Bengals, I've got to be sick at this year, because if the defense was just this much better, this is a Super Bowl caliber team. Honestly, that offense was maybe the best in the NFL, orchestrated by Burrow. Jamar Chase, Triple Crown winner. T. Higgins, I hope he stays with the Bengals. There's been rumors and some talking about how he might take a little bit less money to be back with this team. But what an unbelievable season from the Bengals, and it was a true shame that we didn't get to see them. But I look at everybody talking on Twitter, talking about how all Bengals fans, and I'm not even a Bengals fan, how Bengals fans are going to hold on to this one win over Patrick Mahomes, because a lot of them were kind of victory lapping it when Josh lost to Patrick in the AFC Championship again, 0-4 now. But a lot of people were victory lapping it, the Bengals fans were. And then you had a lot of kind of retaliation from people. Hey, they're just going to sit on this one win that they have. You don't understand how monumental this one win is when you look at what Joe Burrow has done in the 5 seasons that he's been the quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals. It's been truly unbelievable. 2 season-ending injuries. The other 2 seasons goes to the AFC Championship, splits against Pat, and then this year gets historically let down from everybody else on his team. I don't know what else you can ask of Joe Burrow, what else you can expect from Joe Burrow when a guy is throwing for that many passing yards, when a guy is throwing for that many passing touchdowns and is doing everything that he can and is putting on that cape every single week. And at a certain point, you just kind of have to shrug your shoulders and be like, how is this a 4-8 team when they have arguably the best quarterback on the planet, the best receiver on the planet, and the best number 2 receiver on the planet? It was a shame that this Bengals team didn't make the postseason, but I believe they'll be out for revenge next year if this defense could just be a little bit better. And we know how great this offense can be, and I will die on that hill. I'll say it again. Joe Burrow is the second best quarterback in the NFL, and he's the only quarterback that can stop Patrick Mahomes from doing anything in the postseason. I'm Caden Kubler, and thank you guys for watching.